Welcome to episode 136 of the Hail Married podcast. I'm A. Toves, and I'm joined by my husband, the Toves. We've previewed the offense and the defense, and now we're on to the UTSA coaching staff. So let's get started by focusing on the head coach of UTSA football, Jeff Traylor, and some of the changes that he's made leading into the season.
Well, A. Toves, we could list out all of Jeff Traylor's accomplishments, but this conversation isn't about whether Jeff Traylor is a good coach, because look, we know he is. The question is whether the version of Jeff Traylor that built UTSA into a championship program in the CUSA is the same version that can get it to the same level in the American Conference.
I'll admit, college football has completely changed around Coach Traylor. The college football environment that existed when he got here in 2020 just doesn't exist anymore. We now have to deal with, or he now has to deal with, the transfer portal, NIL, conference realignment, rev share. And Traylor's admitted how dramatic those changes have been. He's essentially referred to recruiting in this era as like speed dating.
Sure, but I think my counter to you is going to be that every football coach has had to adapt to this, not just Jeff Traylor. I think that's where the accountability really comes in here.
Yeah, he's talked a lot about making changes. It feels like we've heard this story over the last couple of seasons. He's acknowledged some problems, but this season he's made some changes to coaching staff. He's changed his recruiting strategy. He's gone after character versus chasing talent, in his words.
Okay.
And he's even changed some aspects of the program, like the single digits. So let me ask you this. At what point do we stop talking about these changes that Coach Traylor makes and really start judging him on whether or not the changes actually translate to wins on the field?
To be fair, I think we've been kind of having these conversations now for the last few seasons. And I think a few others have had the same conversations, about whether everything's been enough or it's been working. The problem is that we're just never going to get a timely answer from Jeff. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the issue here, is that how long does it take before he tells us that, yeah, this change didn't work? And I don't know that we're ever going to get that.
Yeah, it's probably because he's never had a losing season, to be honest.
Fair point.
He's never really had to confront those types of questions.
Yeah.
But I will say, I feel like this offseason does feel a little bit different because these changes that he made, they're not just cosmetic. We've talked about, again, like him making changes to coaching hard or being tough. But this time, he actually made staffing changes. So I think that makes this kind of feel like maybe he's more serious this season. So let's kind of talk about those coaching changes that he made.
Okay. Well, let's start talking about those coaches that left, whether on their own accord or there was a dismissal by Jeff Traylor. We have Justin Burke, the offensive coordinator. Joe Price was the associate head coach, passing game coordinator, and wide receiver coach. Sadiq Haynes, defensive line coach and defensive run game coordinator. But I think the one I really want to focus on with you here, A. Toves, was Ryan Philo, the director of sports performance. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because after years of kind of hinting at that change, it wasn't surprising that he made the change at strength coach. It's just like, what took him so long? Did he wait too long to make this change? I guess is where I'm kind of struggling with.
Yeah, again, he's had all of these injuries, particularly on the offensive line, and that's when we've really kind of talked about, strength and conditioning. And this past season, we didn't really see those injuries,
right?
But this was the season where he made the change. So I don't know if we'll ever really get those kind of answers from Coach Traylor because, again, he's not been forced to have that kind of transparency, but it is certainly interesting to see, like, what's the straw that broke the camel's back there.
I agree.
Well, let's kind of talk about some of the new coaches that he brought in. And one of the things I think is important to acknowledge about these coaches is that rather than just promoting from the inside like he's done in the past, he really did look outside of the program, and in some cases outside of his normal coaching tree or candidate pool. We've talked a lot about Rick Bowie coming in as offensive coordinator. Denarius McGee is another hire that he's brought in as a wide receivers coach. Colin Givens is kind of a boomerang, I guess you could say. He had been with the program before, came back as outside linebackers. And then Cordell Grundy joined as an assistant wide receivers coach. And I think we've talked a lot about Rick Bowie. We know a little bit about Colin Givens, but I think the two that we really should kind of maybe dive into are Denarius McGee and Cordell Grundy.
Okay.
I mean, Denarius McGee, kind of an interesting background. He's been both in NFL and he's had experience in the college world coaching. He's not that typical Texas high school football coach that Coach Traylor typically gravitates to, but he does have that connection to Coach Traylor and that he worked with Coach Traylor's son at the Saints in 2024. So I'm guessing, obviously, Coach Traylor is going to put a lot of weight in his son's opinion of this coach. But again, he's a very high energy guy, and I think in combination with Rick Bowie, who we've already talked about, is very high energy too. I think those two are really going to bring a lot of new and different ideas to the staff. And then, I feel like you got to talk about Cordell Grundy. UTSA fans certainly are going to remember him. But it's great to see somebody else who's a former UTSA alum come back and be on staff. Since he's graduated, he's actually had a lot of great experience. He worked with Miami Dolphins. He worked with Colorado, Michigan State. And he's worked both on defense as well as offense. So he has kind of an interesting breadth of experience in his short tenure.
Yes.
But I think it'll be good to have somebody on staff that these current players can really look up to and aspire to be, a coach on a college staff and maybe, aspire to coming back to UTSA.
Well, I look forward to seeing these guys go out there and in this new version of UTSA in 2026. Well, HOs, we've talked about sort of the outside hires. Let's talk about some of the internal promotions, because when we talk about changes at coaching staff, a good mixture would probably be what Jeff Traylor has done this season, which is go outside and get fresh ideas, but also look inside to see if he can develop some of these coaches and get fresh ideas from them as well. So Jamal Ashley, Will linebackers coach last season. He is now the defensive line coach. Malik Walker, he was the assistant cornerbacks coach last season. He's now the safeties coach. And then Chris Nelson, a grad assistant on defense, this season moves into the defensive tackles coach. So good to see those three come in and now get a chance to get promoted, and we'll see how they perform this season.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other changes that we talked about were some cultural changes that Coach Traylor wanted to make this season. And the biggest one really was a change to the single digits. I think the single digits have kind of come under some scrutiny over the last couple of seasons. It sort of felt like, to me, Traylor was using the single digits to reward loyalty rather than really making sure that he had the best leaders in those roles.
As an example of what you were referring to, we were informed on the Colorado State road trip last season that a grad assistant's first responsibility after being hired was to wake up a single digit player to get him to practice every day. I mean, just from the outside looking in, Atos, that player's lack of accountability doesn't epitomize what a single digit in the triangle of toughness culture should be.
Right.
And I think it's clear there that everything you outlined before really was one of the reasons why we needed to see some change.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of the reason why Traylor decided to change up those single digits and really just limit it this season to the 2-1-0. I mean, he has said that at some point they might be able to vote other players into single digits. He said the same thing last year, and we didn't end up seeing that. So I think it's probably a good idea, though, that he limits those numbers and he really focuses on having the best players and leaders versus, just trying to reward loyalty like he has in the past season. One of the other things, though, that I thought was interesting was that we've usually seen a big deal made about these numbers when they come out.
Right.
And this year, he didn't do that. I mean, he just let the kids kind of showcase their numbers at the kickoff luncheon and then very quietly updated the roster. So there was no fanfare, about these numbers at all this season. But again, that might kind of tie back into, really making it about having the right kids for the culture and not necessarily needing all of that other announcement, bravado, whatever.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that kind of culture change, whether it lasts or whether there's going to be more of a announcement next year. But let's talk about who those players are. On offense, we have returning at number 2, Owen McCown. At the 1 is Will Henderson, and then 0 is David Amador. Hey, Toves, I think they're all talented players. Again, much like we talked about Jeff Traylor, we're not going to dispute whether he's a good coach. We're not going to dispute whether these guys are good players. But are you at all concerned that these offensive single digits are they've said themselves that they're quiet, lead by example guys? Because to me, I wonder if we're missing maybe that vocal leader.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but looking at the roster, I'm not really sure who I would say is a vocal leader on the offense. I mean, for the most part, all of the guys that are leaders in the different position groups are pretty quiet guys.
Sure.
To contrast that, though, we do have pretty loud voices in the offensive coordinator and the wide receivers coach. So I don't know, maybe that all balances itself out.
Okay.
But on defense, our single digits are the number 2, we have Owen Pee-wee repeating, number 1, Cam Cooper, and then in a surprise, the number 0 is Jeremiah Bailey. Again, Jeremiah Bailey is really the only one out of this whole group that's a new player. So it's kind of interesting to see. The same thing happened last year with Shad Banks, and that obviously turned out to be great. But it's a little bit surprising because up until this point, we really haven't heard much from Jeremiah Bailey or about Jeremiah Bailey. And Ty Leonard was a 1 last season, and he's a returner, and he's not listed here. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, again, with Jeremiah Bailey, he mentioned today when we finally saw him in a press conference that he'd been a captain before. He views himself as a leader. Coach Traylor talked about how he felt that Jeremiah really believed in the triangle and the culture. It's interesting, but again, we saw great things happen last season with Shad Banks. So I guess we'll just kind of have to trust that the same will be true for Jeremiah Bailey.
All righty, Toes. Now that we've talked about some of the changes that were made on the coaching staff, we've kind of talked a little bit about the cultural changes with the single digits and discussed these players as well and their leadership abilities. 2026 kind of becomes this big test. It feels like a pivotal season for Jeff Traylor. There's a lot of changes that have happened with coaches and players within the American Conference. So with all those changes, there's a really great opportunity here for UTSA. My big unanswered question for you is, has Jeff Traylor done enough to seize on this opportunity?
Well, I think time will tell, but it certainly feels like we're taking some steps in the right direction. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic as I look forward in the season, but ultimately the results are going to tell us the story. Because at some point, we can't just continue to have these 6-6, 7-6 seasons and have that be our new normal at UTSA.
Let's transition then to predicting UTSA's record for the 2026 season. I know I'm very much in a fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, Jeff Traylor. I've got that vibe going on into this season because there have been moments where over the last season where we've kind of felt like, oh, this should be a gimme game or this should be something that we take advantage of, and we don't. So, all right, we'll go game by game. Let's start out with the first one, which we'll be previewing next week. It's at home. It's UTRGV FCS squad. To me, like I said, we'll preview this next week, but for me, it's a big win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, UTRGV obviously is very optimistic about their opportunities at UTSA if you listen to any of their 15 podcasts. But at the end of the day, they're a second-year FCS program, and UTSA is just bigger, stronger, faster. So I agree with you, big win. But that takes us to the first big pivotal game on the schedule, which is Texas State in San Marcos. And while I would love to be just super bullish on UTSA and say we're going to right the ship and beat Texas State, I'm concerned that, we aren't necessarily going to get there this season. This is going to be our first big road test. Honestly, what I'm really looking for out of the team going into San Marcos is progress. If this is a game that's close in the fourth quarter, that we're really competitive, I'll feel good about it, even if we do lose, as hard as that is to say.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking it's a loss as well. It's the last opportunity for Owen McCown to get a win over Texas State. And for Jeff Traylor, if he doesn't capitalize on this one, when do we see a win against Texas State again? Because at this point, you'd have to say that GJ has quite the upper hand on UTSA. All right, well then we transition then again to the second road game of the season, third game of the year. It's in Austin against UT. This is our UTRGV moment, I guess, as you kind of alluded to earlier. We can be optimistic as hell about this, but the reality is, as long as we come out of this without many injuries, and I'm sure you've heard that from us before when it comes to playing one of these P4 level schools, it's going to be a loss.
Yeah, I have this as a loss too. I mean, I think right now Texas is just, on a different playing field than UTSA is, unfortunately. We will then come back and play Colorado State at home in the Alamo Dome. I have this as a win. I expect us to rebound from our two disappointing losses on the road, feel good and comfortable back in the Dome, even though Colorado State's rebuilding with a better coach. I still think UTSA can pull this out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a close win. Look for Jim Mora Jr. He's a very good coach. He had a lot of success at Connecticut, where college football coaches do not have success at. So if you're pulling that, man, you just got to watch out. Again, he's just good, and it's going to be a tough matchup there in the Dome. All right, Atos. Well, here's a key one, because we are now going back on the road to Houston and playing Rice. 2 seasons ago, we played Rice in Houston, and we lost on essentially the last drive of the game. Luckily, they don't have EJ Warner now, but I think based on where Rice is right now and what I know of Rice, I'm going to call this a win.
Yeah, I have this as a win too. I mean, we have historically struggled in conference road games the last 2 seasons, but I do think that we're still in a position where we're going to be able to pull off the win easily against Rice. And then we'll come back home on a Thursday game. We'll play South Florida. I think this is going to be a tough game. I mean, South Florida has a new coach. They have a new quarterback. But Brian Hartline, he will ultimately, in my mind, become a good coach. But this game is at home. I think, again, the magic of the Alamo Dome, we've been able to show that we can play against some of the best teams very well. And even with Brian Hartline and their new quarterback, I think, we'll be successful in this game.
To quote Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. I disagree here. I think this one's going to be a loss. I think we'll be reeling a little bit here, and I think Brian Hartline will essentially get more out of a South Florida team than South Florida has gotten out of their program the last couple seasons. So it'll be a loss. And we move on to our next home game, and that's Navy, a service academy, Atos. We've had so many problems against Army. Now here's a test against a different service academy. And I don't know, Atos, I just think that despite them being different from Army, I still see a same result. I see this as a very close loss I think it's going to be a good Navy squad.
Yeah, I have this as a loss as well. I mean, we've just struggled against the discipline of the service academies, even when we play in the Alamo Dome, and I don't think that this is going to be any different, unfortunately. Then we travel after that to Tulane, and while I would love to pick this game as a win, I think that this game will likely be a loss because we have a later bye week this year, and I think going into the Tulane game, coming off of the loss at Navy, we might be frustrated. We might have some mounting, nagging injuries. And I think this will just be more of a struggle than it needs to be. But if we win this game, I think it'll be, certainly in my mind, a big turning point for the program.
Well, one more time, not so fast, my friend. I totally get you. It's hard to disagree with you in terms of there being potential lingering injuries and the nagging ones that may kind of hurt us along the way. But there are a few things in this world that I don't believe in, and one of those things is Will Hall. And that Will Hall hire for Tulane was the most disappointing thing I've ever seen from an American Conference hire. So, with that said, I think Jeff Traylor pulls one out before the bye week. We rest, we heal up a little bit, we get back out on the road. To Boca Raton. And in Boca Raton, we take on an FAU team that I think is going to be a little more underrated, or is underrated based on what I've heard from many pundits. I think Zach Kitley is a shrewd evaluator of talent. I think he's going to have this team ready to play, and so I'm picking a loss here.
Yeah, I have this as a loss as well. I think this is one of those games that, I feel like UTSA certainly could win, but this is one of the few conference opponents that we're going to play this year that have a returning quarterback and a returning coach. And I think our defense might really struggle with this high-powered Kitley offense. So that's going to bring us back to the Dome the following week. It'll be homecoming. It's kind of a late homecoming this year, but we are playing North Texas, which, I got to give it to our marketing people that, they looked at the schedule and said, you know what, we're going to push homecoming so that it can be against North Texas, because North Texas struggles when they come to the Dome. And let's be honest, while they have, I think, the right person for their coach right now, they are a shell of the team that we saw last season. So I think UTSA will win this game.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have put like homecoming against like Navy or something like that. So you're right. I think this North Texas game is a good homecoming game. It should have a rowdy crowd. I agree with you. I think Neil Brown's a good hire. I think we'll see it over time, which is good for this conference. Like we need those good coaches coming into these programs. And yeah, I think it's going to be a win. I mean, North Texas has not won in the Dome since 2018, and the names Mason Fine and Bryce Rivers. Hopefully those spark some good memories, or maybe I should say memories from everybody. So after that, we move again and go on our last road trip to Birmingham at UAB. Look, Alex Mortensen is a heck of an upgrade over Trent Dilfer. I think he'll get them playing better ball, but I don't know that you're going to see the amount of success that they had with the Bill Clark. That said, I think this is, I don't know, I guess an easy win for UTSA. I can say that. The players and Coach Traylor won't, but yeah, a dub here.
Yeah, I think UAB is the only give me road win that we have on the schedule. So I definitely have this as a win. And then we'll come home to Tulsa for our last game. I think Tulsa is going to be sneaky good this season. I think that people are underestimating them. But given the fact that we're in the Alamo Dome and we're going to want to send our seniors off the right way this year, I do think that we're going to pull off a win against Tulsa, although it might be a little closer than we anticipate.
We've talked about some of the coaching hires, and Trey Lamb here I think is a very good coaching hire for Tulsa. Yeah, I'm with you. I think they're going to be sneaky good, but it's hard to imagine UTSA losing on Owen's final home game of his career. We send Owen McCown out with a win, and he rides off into the sunset, so to speak. This means that we get to both of us predicting a 7-5 record for UTSA on the season. Unfortunately, that does not put us in the conference championship games. So another year of questions, another year of where the change is good enough. Again, a step in the right direction is a step in the right direction, and 7-5 is better than 6-6. So we'll see how those 5 losses play out, and if they're more encouraging than discouraging after this season. But with that, Atos, we still get a bowl game, which will extend Jeff Traylor to 7 straight seasons and 7 straight bowl games for UTSA as well. Atos, if we're going by the inside Texas or outside Texas, this is going to be an outside Texas bowl game. I'm sure we will be there. I'm going to predict a win. It's hard to it's hard not to see Owen McCown not riding off in the sunset, winning his final game at the Dome, and then winning his final game ever for UTSA in a UTSA uniform.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're likely going to miss the conference title. I could have gone a couple of different ways on some of these, but I do think we're going to make progress. We're going to get to 7 wins. We'll go to a bowl game. We'll likely win that because every time we miss the conference championship, we seem to have this chip on our shoulder and, really want to pull out that bowl game. So, ultimately, I think an 8-5 record is going to show progress over where we ended last season. And who knows, maybe one of these games will bounce the other way and we could be talking about a 9-win season. Before we go, let's talk about UTSA Soccer. This past week, we played Colorado College, and we got our first win of the season, beating them 2-0. Finally got over that hump. We had a 2-2 draw, a 2-2 draw, but this time we got a 2-0 win. And this was a really dominant attacking performance by UTSA. We had 18 shots, 9 shots on goal versus Colorado College. They had 6 shots and 1 shot on goal.
Yeah, Ava Jackson scored the first goal. She scored it between sort of a collapsing defense, and we'll talk a little bit more about her and just her play a little bit later. Sadie Paul scored 2 goals within this game. Technically, she scored the first one, but I was called off because of a push. I've seen worse ATOs, so,
Sure.
Whatever. Either way, Sadie came back with just a really clever header that she snuck in between a goalie and the goalpost. It was just, it's good to see some of these newer players make big plays like that, and really against a quality opponent here.
Again, UTSA really dominated possession in this game. I thought they really played well, and looking at the score 2-0 may not sound that impressive, but when you realize that Colorado College is a really strong Mountain West team, it is a very good score.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see scores of like 5 or 6-0, right? That's just not the way that Coach Pittman actually has within his culture, and it's not that he's trying to run up the score or anything, but he's more concerned about trying to get younger players and into a game and to buy some minutes and gives his veterans rest. And he did that here, and it kind of coincided really in this being the 3rd straight game to open the season where the team struggled a little bit to close out the game. I guess you could say it was a red flag, just because of the fact that we had trouble trying to close out the game against Texas State. We had absolute trouble closing out the game against TCU. And then it just felt like, are we going to fall apart here in the last, it felt like 15 minutes of the game when really a majority of our younger players were in there. They did struggle. As you said, Colorado College is good, but we just got to find a way to close off those passing lanes and maintain possession. That was really the biggest thing, is that, as you talked about, we dominated percentage-wise the possession, but at the end of the game is where it kind of fell apart. So Kessler was tested more than I think Coach Pittman and I would have liked, because I count. But it's just one of those situations where it happens, and Kessler just was always up to the task here.
And then we moved on to St. Mary's. We won that game 4-1. And with this win, Coach Pittman reached his 66th win and is now tied for the most wins in UTSA history with Steve Ballard. It was a little bit of a rough start for UTSA, though. The end score 4-1 sounds like this was kind of a dominant game start to finish, but we looked a little, I don't know if rocky is the right word, or if maybe we came out just thinking, hey, we're going to dominate, and St. Mary's gave us their best shot at the beginning. But
yeah, I mean, to play off that, I would say that UTSA had some really heavy touches on the ball early on in the first half, and then they just had a lot of unforced passing errors. We saw some of that, but when it's against some tougher competition, it's at times, I would say, expected, but it felt much more prevalent in this game, where there were just open passes that were just absolutely missed, and it was just a head scratcher. And you could tell that the coaching staff was getting frustrated with that. They were also getting frustrated because our wings and our forwards weren't taking some open shots. At one point, I'd say is probably near the end of the first half, you could hear Derek Pittman yelling out, "Take the shot." for some reason, we were just gun shy, and
Yeah.
there were some open lanes for us to take a really nice shot. So our second goal scored, Ava Jackson scored the first one, and then I got to mention the second one because it was Lily Denhart's first career and first UTSA goal. And it got us a 2-1. It was just a really nice cheeky finish from a nice buildup. It's just a freshman growing up in front of our eyes, right? I will say the one goal that St. Mary scored was off of Helen Lazaro's foot. It was a really nice finish, Atoves. I think looking back at it, I'm sure as the soccer team looks at the video, they're going to want to have cut off that ball sooner. But Helen took that shot from just outside the box, or at least right on the box, and put it in a spot where Kessler just couldn't defend it. So just a really nice finish and really top notch. The second half, though, was much better for UTSA. I thought, the touch improved, and because of that, you saw the passing improve more, and then the finishing. I thought the 50-50 balls were kind of tight. It seemed like we were off in terms of trying to judge where Jasmine Kessler's kicks were going. So there wasn't like a bunch of wind, so
Right.
that wasn't to blame. But I will say this. The good parts about it were Amelia Clark, who's a freshman. Her finish was calm and collected, which is encouraging. And on the fourth goal, Leah Varela, just a beautiful free kick into the box, and Dulcie Binns finished it off. I don't know which one I loved more, the finish or the celebration, because if you have a chance to, Dulcie goes to the corner flag and kind of opens up her arms, and in the back, you see the rest of the team kind of bowing down to her like, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. It was a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got to see a little bit more of her personality, in that victory.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I want to get into a habit of is just doing some player shout outs, especially, with 2 games here. We have 2 games worth of data that we want to talk about, some really good performances. First one is Leah Varela. She continues to impress me. I failed to say it last week when we talked about her, but she looks every bit the leader in the field. I could see her directing some of the players and saying, you need to be in this spot. This is where you got to be. And the other thing is that she is UTSA and the American Conference leader in assists with 4 on the season. She had 2 within the St. Mary's game. This also puts her at tied for 3rd in the nation. So
Wow.
Leah, like I said, she's doing her job on the field. She's looking every bit that leader and that tough, really good player that I've mentioned before. Now, those assists are coming off of some excellent free kicks. And, Coach Pittman did mention to us that she worked really hard on that this offseason. So I got to say, it's working. It's a crucial piece of this UTSA formula of success for Derek Pittman. So hopefully we can keep this going. On a side note, I would love, because I always say that she's everywhere, I would love to kind of do a Leah Varela chant, but like the Roy Kent chant from Ted Lasso, and just kind of replace, right? Like, she's here, she's there, she's every flipping word. I wasn't going to say the F word, Atos. And then just, substitute Leah Varela for Roy Kent. But maybe I'll start doing it. I'll be the only one, and that's fine, because I am a Leah Varela fan. The other player I want to shout out here is Jasmine Kessler. She's been a rock in the back. She's only had 1 clean sheet, and that was Colorado College. But it kind of tells you just some of the early defensive struggles that UTSA has had. And, Jasmine just has kept her head up and just keeps playing at a high level. I think if she wasn't as good as she is, we probably would have allowed more goals.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, we had so many injuries in the defense this season that it's really put a lot of pressure on her. And we're very fortunate that we have a senior, experienced, mature goalie back there.
Yeah. And of course, with Derek Pittman, you always have a really tough goalie, right? Got to call out Ava Jackson and Amelia Clark were named honorable mention players of the week. Mentioned Amelia's finish earlier. I just got to say, she's continuing to mature. I thought she grew within both matches. A little tentative, but I mean, that's what happens as you start your career and really start getting going. So I think Amelia is just going to be a nice compliment. I like the way that she moves off the ball and looks for those open spaces. So I feel like she's going to score a few more goals. And she scored 70 plus goals in her high school career. So that shouldn't be a surprise for us. The other one is Ava Jackson, who I kind of mentioned earlier. I really think Atos that she's really putting together a really nice attacking season for UTSA. She's moving really well off the ball, and her teammates are actually finding her. And I think that that's the crucial piece here, is that I wasn't sure what that adjustment was going to be when Shay Ryan unfortunately was lost for the season. So how does that affect BB and how does that affect Ava? Ava has looked just completely dangerous, and I think that the more that she continues to solidify her offensive prowess, I mean, she's up to like 3 goals and an assist, I think. She's going to free up a lot more opportunities for BB. BB has been a little quieter, but you know what? As long as Ava's going, I think we'll take it, and we get BB going by conference time. This is going to be a very dangerous UTSA squad.
Absolutely. Well, next up, we have Texas Southern at home, Thursday, 7:30 at Park West. While the team can't necessarily look ahead, I mean, I think as fans, we can look at this as another opportunity for us to get some playing time for some of those younger players that are really needing to gain some experience while we're working through some injuries before we get into conference play. But certainly the team can't look ahead.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a win, and I just look forward to seeing how they look on the field on Thursday.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the Hail Married podcast. I'm Atovs.
And I'm the Toves.
We'll be back next week to preview UT RGV and with some more soccer news.
Birds up.